Maybe the SOP is right, maybe what I am doing is better than those SOP. And in that context, you have to modernize supply chain in India, which is definitely not the easiest thing to do. On top of it, so what we did was we said, let us mix the best of the West and the best of the country. So we went across the world, starting with Dubai. We went to America's various parts of East Coast to West Coast, various countries of Europe. We went to China, we went to Hong Kong, we went to Singapore. In 2009, we did a joint venture with the promoters family fund of Li and Fung Group of Hong Kong, which is a very, very large group. And that's when I interacted a lot with Hong Kong and got an insight into how China works. And recently, a lot of people across the world have been happy that China's growth story is slowing down. The GDP growth has reduced. It's no longer exporting to the world. And this is the opportunity for India. And that's why the Indian Prime Minister is taking advantage. That's all a lot of hullabaloo. That's not true. Because China has 5-year plans, which are perhaps the best implemented in the world. China's today's growth rate of whatever it is was planned 5 years ago to the right last decimal, and it is exactly following that cycle. So nothing in China has changed. It is going exactly as per their plans. What has changed is they are moving from a B2B philosophy to a B2C philosophy. And what is a B2B philosophy? And this language I've learned because I keep visiting Hong Kong. A B2B philosophy is a billion to billion. A billion people in China were manufacturing for a billion people across the world over the last several years. And now China is strategically moving towards B2C. A billion people in China will produce for a billion people consuming in China. And that's a phenomenal change. A B2B to a B2C. Billion people exporting to billion people, now billion people producing for billion people. So now China's focus is on consumption, and for that they have been incentivizing their entire blue-collar force for the last 7-8 years with a 13% annualized increment to make sure that today they reach a level of consumption which will propel China now to the next level of growth. Now that is actually being done for the welfare of China, and that coincidentally suits India to start the Make in India campaign. And the Prime Minister of India, being a bachelor, even at 64 can think sharp and agile with agility because he has no baggage. He has figured out that a lot of programs existing in the country, if they can be brought together, he can create the Make in India as a program. And Make in India is actually, he's actually made it into a landmark project. It's one of the most innovative projects in the world. But what he has done, he has actually gathered together a whole lot of the existing projects which were not moving ahead, clubbed them together, and actually he's moving them fast. So one of them is the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor project. In addition, there are 5 Pentagon projects. For example, Mumbai-Delhi is one. Mumbai-Bangalore is another. Vizag Calcutta is 3rd, Amritsar to Calcutta is 4th. So there's a Pentagon project put together, and a Make in India project is starting. On top of that, he's building smart cities across each of these corridors to propel consumption. These are cities which will have modern amenities within walkable distance, and they will become smart, technology-based, automation-based cities, manufacturing for India as well as the rest of the world. Now, this Make in India project will actually increase exports, increase production, and the aim is to take manufacturing as a part of GDP from the current 15% to 25% of GDP. As one of the presentations earlier said, India's logistics cost is 14% of GDP. There's another mega project called GST, Goods and Services Tax, because India is a continent of 32 countries, each headed by a prime minister or a equivalent called chief minister, and then there's a federal structure headed by the prime minister. In such a complex country, each state has its own taxation system, direct and indirect. Some belong to the center and some belong to the states. All of them are being brought under a unified regime called Goods and Services Tax to be implemented next year. A mega change for the country. Most likely it will improve the GDP of the country by 2%. However, I will give you my 2 bit on this. Since manufacturing will move from 15% to 25%, and today the services sector is 53% of India's GDP. Services means, for example, this hotel, Intercontinental in Dubai. This is services sector. The cost of logistics for a service sector is very, very low. as a percentage of total revenues or as a total percentage of total production. Since service sector is very large, the logistics cost, despite being 14%, may not substantially go down because manufacturing is about to increase. If manufacturing as a percentage of GDP increases from 15 to 25, the services will reduce. GST will bring in a saving of 2%. Despite that, the logistics cost as a percentage of GDP in India might remain only around 12-13%. It will not come down to 10. That's my reading. That's good and bad. Good in the sense that all of us sitting here in this room have phenomenal opportunity in India. There will be exports, there will be imports, there will be phenomenal amount of transport movement, there will be storage, there will be modern warehouses, and so on. On top of that, India is just booming in the e-commerce space. E-commerce is the latest boom. Of course, it is more noise than action actually right now. There are innovative ways of projecting e-commerce as the next big, and media actually picks up babies. You know what? 2004, I was one of the retail CEOs in the country, and retail had become media's darling at that time. So everyday newspapers would carry stories on retail. Today, e-commerce is the story in India. There are innovative ways of projecting e-commerce growth. There are right now, only 25 million consumers of e-commerce in India. That's not a very large number in a 1.25 billion country. But the financial valuations of e-commerce companies are going through the roof. $10 billion, $15 billion, $20 billion. The Alibabas of the world are further propelling the e-commerce story in India. The sales being projected by the e-commerce companies is something you can never figure out as to what the actual sales are. If you see the registrar of companies figures, the figure is 100 crores or 200 crore rupees. When you read the figures in the newspapers, it's in billions of dollars. How do the two add up? They never will. Because there's a unique concept called gross merchandising value which has been developed in India. For example, if we do, say, $1 million sale today, we might be doing $1,000 of sale every day, but on one single day you do $1 million sale, immediately the gross merchandising value can be projected as $365 million sale for the year. And there are such innovative ways. Also, the discount value of products is not counted on. And I'm talking about e-commerce because e-commerce is very, very hot. So what the real figures of e-commerce are in India? Nobody knows. What do we know is that valuations are going through the roof. This is one sector which is there to stay, which will keep on growing. And what we also know is that every single e-commerce company is burning millions of dollars every day, not in months. Some of them are burning several $1 million a day, just in the hope that one fine day it will start breaking even. Whether it will or it will not for us to decide, only time will tell. I have not yet used the presentation because I'm keeping my flow of thoughts going. When we come to the presentation quickly, I'll just tell you a few points about the modernization of the Indian supply chain. Fast emerging India, this is the Indian GDP which I told you about. The Indian consumption juggernaut, of course, when 1.25 billion people start consuming, you can figure out what happens to the economy, and that is exactly what is happening. The purchasing power is increasing. The telecom, it used to be the costliest telecom country in the world 5-7 years ago. Today is the cheapest telecom rates in the world. Transforming India. This is what the godowns look like, and this is what they look like today. A lot of companies have worked, but perhaps we have been able to work the most because we belong to the largest retail group in the country and we needed the most. We were willing to invest the most and we needed the most. Lot of automation, lot of technology. When we had 50-60,000 square foot godowns, today we have warehouses. For example, our own company has 8 facilities which are more than 500,000 square feet with more than 12 meters in height. 7 years ago, even 100,000 square feet facility was a rarity. Today we have 20 logistics parks, 8 of them are 500,000 square feet, the remaining are all 300,000 square feet plus. We run 6.5 million square feet today, all of them more than 300,000 square feet each box. The land area is approximately 13 million square feet. This is for our company. We were entrepreneurial, we were in the retail business, we needed the most, we took the lead, but now a lot of companies are following suit. A lot of automation is being brought to India, a lot of technology is being brought to India. This is what you'll see today in our warehouses. So godowns have become warehouses, warehouses became distribution centers have become factories. You have automation, WMS, sortation systems, put-to-light sortation systems, auto weight check systems, auto print and apply systems. So warehouses are no longer warehouses, they're almost like factories. Just to give you a benchmark, 8 years ago, there was no warehouse in India which could actually do a throughput of more than 50,000 pieces of apparel in a day. When we went around the world in 2007, 8, 9, we found there were warehouses in the world which did 500,000 pieces a day. Today we have a distribution center in Nagpur, which is the center of India, doing 700,000 pieces a day. And by next year, it will start doing million pieces of garments in a day and will match perhaps the top 3 DCs in the world. Today, it's already in the top 6 distribution centers in the world. The largest DC in the world throughput in apparel is only 1 million pieces, which we should achieve next year in India. A lot of kitting operations, a lot of value services. This is Nagpur, the next level of automation going on. This is a phenomenal amount of automation, which is actually being done. 1 million pieces in this was all unimaginable 7, 8 years ago, but we have done a lot in the last 7, 8 years, and a lot of people are now catching up and doing similar things in the country. Only thing is this, we are slightly ahead of the curve. Cold chains have started evolving. We also recently procured a cold chain company, but cold chain has now caught on speed. Food processing is one of the major focus areas of the Prime Minister. So a lot of food processing has started happening. E-commerce is leading to last mile fulfillment. A lot of automation in transportation. Now most of the companies use VTS. This was something unheard of 6, 7 years ago. Today every company uses vehicle tracking system and modern tracking systems for trucks. Despite 15 million, 1.5 million individual truck owners owning at an average of 4 trucks. Service parts logistics has become big. It's becoming very automation based, last mile based. A lot of transformation happening. Make in India I talked to you about. GST I talked to you about. It's a game changer. A phenomenal impact will happen. This will reduce the storage points of most of the companies in the country in next year, and this will require an integrated warehousing cum transportation integrated supply chain across the country to meet the needs of the GST based economy, because large DCs doing the large throughputs will be required at limited locations in the country, and that's where we have done a lot of work, and a whole lot of other people will do the same. Infrastructure is already being improved. Mr. Jani's presentation talked about that. This is government's efforts, a lot of logistics parks coming, food processing parks coming, SEZs coming. This is Nagpur. So business climate is improving, land reforms are happening. That's why the current government is actually battling to issue the land reforms. And a lot of things are happening. We are actually doing our bit. These are our sectors of expertise. These are the sectors which drive consumption and hence require the most automation. And this will be required by any logistics company in the country because it's an evolving economy. So basically an orchestration of automation, infrastructure, technology, systems, process, people, know-how, expertise, and network. Handling capacities will be required, project management tools will be required, transition expertise will be required, processes will be required, something as I told you is not easy in India, and GST readiness will be required to make it a successful supply chain world where all of you are invited to participate in the India's growth story. Thank you so much.
Christian, I think it's ready right now.
All right, I'll try to speed through the first part of the presentation since I've already spoken to it. But here I was actually talking about the oil prices and the ability of countries to generate growth. As you can see, it's one of the countries that might be represented here. Angola is the country in the world that will have the hardest time generating economic growth based on the lower oil price. Whereas, as you can see further to the bottom, UAE and Nigeria surprisingly actually are, or maybe not surprisingly for many, but they are in positions where they will be able to generate economic growth also without the oil prices being higher. On the right-hand side, the risk for the Middle Eastern economies based on the oil price staying around $60, and which of the countries will actually on a running basis have an issue with a higher expenditure. And you can see where the oil price is currently trending. It's Kuwait, Qatar, and UAE that are on a running basis in a position to cater for that, whereas some countries, of course, has significant savings that will stomach this for a while. So it will probably have some adverse effect on the business in our part of the world. It will, however, also have some good news, and that is actually what it's going to do to the GDP. So a lower oil price, if it stays around $60, it is estimated that it will lift the global GDP by 0.3% annually. And that, of course, is interesting. You can see it's OPEC that will suffer. You can see some of the countries to the right. This is the relative growth difference that you will see. It's not the absolute growth in GDP. So the world will benefit, the Eurozone will benefit. India, as you can see, will benefit tremendously, probably most of all. And some of the slightly older economies in Europe, also Germany, will actually benefit from that, the US. So that's a positive. And in relation to that, in our industry, we talk about a GDP multiplier from GDP growth to transportation. Now that multiplier has, at some point in the good old days, it actually reached almost 3 times the GDP. That was when all the outsourcing and offshoring was going on. Today we are seeing it come down, and we estimate that going forward we're looking at more like somewhere between 1.4 to 1.6. And that's what we are seeing. But even at that level, it would mean that if the oil price stays where it is, we should see an increase in container growth of 0.5 percentage point. Again, at the bottom, you'll see the various trade lanes. There's only one trade lane that will not benefit from this, and it's the Middle East. So we have Middle East and Indian subcontinent as one, as a combined. It is actually expected to have an adverse impact on the